Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hi everybody, this is Neil Allen, the creator of Zatswan, the cosmic fantasy series. You can buy the graphic novel Multiversal Guardian in the link in the description on Amazon.com. It is a 130-page graphic novel that's only $2.99 or free with a Kindle Unlimited subscription. You could also get it in paperback. So it seems that we have some news about Green Lantern, John Stewart, and Hawkgirl, which I guess is sort of a niche I'm falling into a bit, talking about these two or keeping up with their goings-on in comics and cartoons and films. So this article came out, and let's read through a bit of it. Two major Superman and Green Lantern heroes may return in James Gunn's Man of Tomorrow. Goes on to say, the new DC universe is off and running under the direction of DC Studios co-heads James Gunn and Peter Safran, and they're wasting no time building it all out. To that end, Gunn recently announced the follow-up to this summer's Superman, which he directed, in the form of a new movie called Man of Tomorrow. While David Corenswet's Man of Steel will be a major character, this film is not being billed as a straight-up sequel. To that end, more heroes are seemingly joining the roster for this one. Isabella Merced, who plays Hawkgirl, responded after James Gunn's Man of Tomorrow announcement on social media. Taking to her Instagram stories, the actress shared the artwork included in Gunn's announcement, which features Superman standing next to Lex Luthor in his war suit, along with the caption, "See you soon." That makes it pretty clear that Merced will be part of the proceedings, and she's not alone. On James Gunn's Instagram post announcing the movie, Aaron Pierre, who was playing the Green Lantern John Stewart in the Lanterns TV show, commented saying, "Yes, indeed," with a green heart emoji. Gunn then replied to the comment with an excited hands emoji. Pierre also shared Gunn's post on his Instagram stories as well. That's slightly less definitive than Merced's post, but it seems to point in the same direction. Okay, so then the article goes on more or less to say that I'm sorry I'm clearing my throat so much. It goes on to say that basically the TV and movie stuff is the same universe. So see, even though Aaron Pierre will be appearing on the Lantern show, it's the same, it's connected with the James Gunn universe, and they're all the same characters using all the same continuity. So I'm going to give my thoughts about this while I pull out some of my Zatswan artwork and continue to work on that. Okay, about the throat clearing, I think it's allergies. I could get like pretty bad hay fever during certain times in the year. I think I've been doing pretty good though this summer due to a combination of regularly taking Claritin and Flonase. But still, I guess today I kind of woke up with a bit of sneezing going on, so I think that's what that's about. So about the artwork, I know I brought you along with me while doing this page. This is what it's looking at now. Like, most of the figures are colored in and ready to go, the big ones. We just have to work on this Zatswan here and this one down here. But once we get those in, then this page, the backgrounds won't take long to color in. But about this recent announcement with Hawkgirl and John Stewart. So, yeah, it looks like to me it's pretty clear that we're going to be getting Hawkgirl and John Stewart Green Lantern in this upcoming Man of Tomorrow film, which, let me look here, I believe it said it's coming out in, summer of 2027, so honestly, that's not far off at all, so they're keeping the momentum going pretty strong. So I'm going to give my predictions about what we're going to see in regards to these characters here, since that's what in particular I've been focusing on. I do believe we are likely to get a. I don't think that they're going to pass up the opportunity to have a Hawkgirl and Jon Stewart romance in this universe. I do think that that is going to happen, and we'll probably see the either beginnings of it or the foundation for it in this upcoming film, which is exciting, and I look forward to that, and I'll definitely be commenting on the goings on with that. Now, is it completely perfect to me? No. By the way, I am using colored pencils here. The only thing that I have any kind of issue with, and I do admit I'm being kind of picky with this, only that it's in my perfect world, it would be Jon Stewart with the Shayera Hall version of Hawkgirl instead of the Kendra Saunders version of Hawkgirl, which is what we are getting, or what we have in this new James Gunn universe. I don't think that we're going to get Shayera Hall at all in the James Gunn universe, and honestly, at this point, I don't think we should, because we don't really need various Hawk people, Hawk women going around, various Hawk girls. That would just unnecessarily confuse things. So I think the best thing to do is, now that they've committed to Kendra, they should just stick with Kendra and go all the way with Kendra. Now, the Hawk people are very confusing, like the Hawk characters. They deal with reincarnation and past lives and all this stuff. And the actress, Isabella Merced, who said that she was interested in having a romance with the Jon Stewart character, her character Hawkgirl having that romance, kind of noted that as well. Like, she notes that her character is Kendra, but she says with all this past life mumbo jumbo that the Hawks do, you could easily kind of make a connection between Kendra and Shayera, having the same soul or spirit, or, whatever you would want to call that. So, yeah, there are ways you can get around that. So, ultimately, I think that that's what they should do. Now, again, in my perfect world, it would just be Shayera, but they decided to go with Kendra. I'm assuming, this is an assumption, that Kendra may have been more attractive to them on grounds of offering some racial diversity, which, I'm not, downplaying that at all. So they may have just wanted to go with Kendra for that reason, and I think that, or maybe not, maybe that didn't even come into it. Could have been, they just wanted to for another reason. But Kendra is, in this James Gunn universe, is more or less written like how Shayera was in the Justice League cartoon shows. So I think for all intents and purposes, I believe that Kendra is more or less going to be like Shayera anyway, if that makes sense. Basically the same sort of character, same personality, different alter ego. So instead of Shayera Hall, it's Kendra Saunders. And I think they'll just probably do an all-encompassing Hawkgirl under the identity of Kendra Saunders. Now, again, not my perfect world, but it's okay. Like, I think it's still fine. And I do think that a romance with Jon Stewart, even though it isn't, my preferred Hawkgirl, is still something I think that they should go ahead with. Now, I have been reading, I did mention, like, in my last video that I was reading some stuff from Hawkman fans, essentially talking about some of the goings on. And their thoughts on some of these issues were that, okay, this is how some of them felt. It's fine for Jon Stewart to be involved with Kendra. That's not Shayera. So keep Jon Stewart away from Shayera. Um, and okay, if you want to do a romance with him and Kendra, whatevs. I've seen that idea put forward. I'm gonna give kind of my thoughts and predictions on where things are gonna go, and they're just predictions, so I could be wrong. And I'm not just saying this to be kind of let's blend out with some. I'm not using my odorless mineral spirits this time. I am using some less toxic walnut oil. So we're going to blend out with that. I'm going to give my thoughts on this, and I'm not saying this to be contrarian or to like shoot down people's, to burst their bubbles or anything like that. I am really just going to give you my general predictions on where I think things will go with Jon Stewart and the Hawkgirls in comics and movies and whatever else. Here's how I predict things will go, and I don't think that Hawkman fans will be happy with any of it. Okay, so I do think there will be a romance between Jon Stewart and Kendra Saunders, Hawkgirl, in the films. I think they're just going to play Kendra Saunders even as if she were just Shiera. More or less. I mean, more or less. As far as personality and kind of role on the team and just how they write her, I think she'll more or less be the same character as Shiera was on the cartoon shows, with maybe some differences, like perhaps she won't be a Thanagarian, which is a big difference. But I mean, in terms of how she interacts with everyone and her, role on the team and how her personality is written, I think she'll just more or less be like, how Hawkgirl has been previously written in other things like the DC animated universe with Shiera Hall. So, given that, I do think that they are probably just going to move ahead with a romance between Jon Stewart and Hawkgirl, because as I've said in other videos, when it comes to Hawkgirl, like Jon Stewart just kind of goes along with that. I think it's kind of what a lot of people who know the Hawkgirl character are going to expect, even. And I say that based upon when the actress was interviewed. That one interview, the first thing that comes out the interviewer's mouth is like, how about that hot girl and Jon Stewart? And then she gets to talking about that and speaks favorably of the relationship. So I don't think that's just all like, you know, they're going to talk about that and then do nothing with it. I do think they're going to move forward with a relationship there. Now, I don't believe that Shiera Hall will show up in the James Gunn universe at all, for the reasons I said. No need to confuse things there. Like, if you're doing Kendra, then we don't need another Hawk woman, Hawk girl, or Hawk female like that going around just kind of diluting things. Now, let's get to the DC comic books. Recently in Green Lantern Corps comic books, the current 2025 Green Lantern Corps series, beginning with, I believe, issue number 1 even, the creators, DC Comics, has been teasing, and even more than teasing, like strongly suggesting, romance between Jon Stewart, Green Lantern, and Hawkwoman Shiera Hall. Now, you could maybe, if you're being kind of hopeful, like if you're on the Hawkman side, I think the hope there is / would be that, oh, these are just like nods to the show, nods to the Justice League animated show. They don't really mean anything for any serious plans of putting these two characters together on the horizon. I actually disagree, especially given everything that other signs that we're seeing in regards to Jon Stewart and Hawkgirl. It seems to me that DC Entertainment is now a lot more open to the idea of pairing these two characters together. We're seeing it in film, we're seeing it hinted at in the comics. Here's what I think will happen in the comics. I do believe Jon Stewart and Shiera Hall will get together in the comics. So This is the confusing thing. I don't think Jon Stewart and Kendra will get together in the comics, even though they will be together, likely, I believe, in the James Gunn universe. In the actual comic universe, where Shayera Hall actually is a thing, I think the creators were like, well, let's go all the way and give the fans what they've really been wanting. No kind of compromise, just Jon Stewart with Shayera Hall, his like kind of love interest that people recognize from the cartoon show. So I think that, to summarize again, because I know that could be kind of confusing, but Hawk people almost always are. I think in the James Gunn universe, Jon Stewart will be with Kendra. In the comic universe, since we've already seen all of this hinted, we've seen Jon Stewart and Kendra hinted at, and we're seeing it. We've already seen the actress of Hawkgirl hint at a relationship with Jon Stewart in the movies. So I think they will do that. Jon will be with Kendra in the movies. In the comics, I think they are going to put Jon Stewart with Shayera, doing that to mimic the show. And I think it's like the comics and the movies won't be exactly on the same page, but more or less. It's like Jon Stewart with a Hawkgirl. I think that's basically the point. And I think that, how do I feel about that? If it goes that route, which there's reason to suspect that it very well may, um, eh, it's not ideal. But again, Hawk people just aren't ideal in a lot of ways. I think it's cool. I think it's okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. I won't say I'm perfectly fine, because, again, perfect to me would just be Jon and Shayera just consistently in the various media. But if movie people wanted to go with Kendra, I get that, and you know, it's cool. So I'm more or less happy with that configuration, even if it isn't perfect. And I'm excited about that, and I think they're on the right track with it. Now, I think that a lot of people in the general audience, like, of course, many people will not care, but there are still people who remember the Justice League cartoon shows and will be excited to see that relationship, go on again. And I think that's good. And I think that that was one of the things why Jeff Johns, I don't believe, was like a good fit. And I think it's not surprising that this DC stuff is doing better now that Jeff Johns is, like, I believe, removed from all of these projects. I don't think he's working on, I could be wrong, but I don't think he's working really on anything for DC at the moment in terms of like movies or shows or anything like that. I think the problem with Jeff Johns is he was too much of a comic book geek and too out of touch with a general audience. I think he thought that he can just pull his comic book geekiness out in front of everybody, and I don't think it works that way, especially when especially when there are other things the audience has already sort of accepted, like, say, a Jon Stewart is Green Lantern or something like that. I think a Jeff Johns have the mindset of more, no, that's incorrect, that's against the comics, I'm just going to bring you the comics. And as I've said in my previous video, the one right before this one, it should be, is that sometimes other stuff actually does things better than the comics. Just because it's the source material does not mean it is intrinsically superior. So to go against stuff that the general audience has already accepted just because it was against the source material, just because that stuff was the comics, I think that was unwise. So there are instances, I think the point that I want to make here, to put it concisely, there are instances when just bringing the comics to people, I don't even think that's necessarily bringing the comics unadulterated. to people, that I don't necessarily think that's always the way to go, especially when the general audience has already responded favorably to stuff that kind of goes against the source material. As I've mentioned in other videos, that source material is incredibly dated. It's built on a foundation of stuff that was started in the 1930s. And that's the danger you get into when you just want to bring people just the comics. The comics, it is good to have reverence for them because we wouldn't have any of this stuff without them. But at the same time, you don't want to take that reverence and turn it into sort of an unyielding, uncompromising policy. You know what I mean? It is good to question that stuff sometimes, and question whether or not it is actually what the audience today, what will work best for the audience today. You don't want to just take something built off of a 1930s foundation and act like it's translating that to the audience today is just going to completely work the best for an audience today. I think that's where like a Jeff Johns kind of has gone wrong. I believe he felt that he can just take that comic book stuff, as ancient and dated as it is, and just put it out there as is. And and then you could also argue about the execution even at doing that. And I think that like for example, Green Lantern and Hawkgirl is not, that's the problem a lot of fans have had with it. It's not comics accurate, regardless of the fact that it actually connected with an audience. What I feel is more important at this juncture, what has connected with the audience and what has proved, to work with them. What is it that they want? And I believe that trumps, ancient comic accuracy. So I do applaud DC if they're headed in this direction, which it looks like they are, for actually paying more attention to what the audience is likely to like, as opposed to just what very, very old comics say is the correct way to do things. Now I do, because one of the arguments against Green Lantern and Hawkgirl is that, and I know this is an ancient comics continuity, one of the arguments is that, oh, this Robert Venditti run, they're gonna throw out the Robert Venditti run if they do Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, and okay, what are my thoughts on that? So my thoughts on that are like, okay, what takes precedence? Like, what seems more important? Is it this Robert Venditti run that isn't being published anymore, that last we knew it was maybe selling around, being very generous, 19,000 something copies, 18,000, maybe 17. I don't remember. I don't have the figures in front of me. That, or hundreds of millions movies, or maybe a billions of dollars film franchise. Are you going, what is going to be more important here? This is why I say sometimes comic fans kind of get trapped in their own bubble, and that is like that is a weakness that is important to pay attention to. I understand they like what they like and they're passionate about that, and that is good. But sometimes they just lose perspective on everything else outside of their bubble, and that I see as a weakness. So, my thoughts on that. If they are going to do Green Lantern and Hawkgirl in film, if they are going to do that, then I do believe it is wise to synergize that with the comics. Why is that? Because you do not want people coming looking for their characters, looking for them the way they like them, and they cannot find that stuff in comic books. And then when they inquire about it, They do not need someone like these comic fans coming up telling them how wrong they are, that oh, that's just the movies and that's inaccurate, it's not comics accurate. No, what that is going to do is simply push those people away from being comic readers. Now, I know the argument to that is that, okay, trying to get these other people who aren't already readers, that's just chasing a phantom audience that will never be into your thing. Okay, so about that, my thoughts on that are this. Anytime you do anything like that, you're taking a risk. When you're in business, when you're in war, when you're doing love or romance, you're always gambling somewhat. There is always a risk factor involved. You know what I mean? But if you don't do anything, you won't get anything. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you just go out there do stuff willy-nilly, but if you're constantly just playing it safe, you're not likely to get anywhere. It's the people who are actually willing to take risks, that actually, get somewhere, see a return on that. So, and I don't even really think that's a big risk. The only people there it looks like they might alienate with this stuff are, some of the fans that I've, mentioned lately in videos, Hawkman fans and Hal Jordan fans. And I don't think those forces are so great that, risking not giving them exactly what they want, the way they want it, I don't think that's that big of a risk. So it's really not even that big of a risk. But I do think that there should be some element of synergy between the movies and shows with the comic books to an extent. And what is that extent, actually? I feel that the characters that are being prominently featured in the movies and shows should be prominently featured in the comics. Now, they don't have to look exactly like the actors and actresses who play them. The storylines do not have to be exactly like the storylines from the film. Actually, people may not even want to see that. But what they will want to see is their characters in familiar configurations that they like them. So, if you're doing a romance with Jon Stewart and Hawkgirl in movies, I do believe that is one of those things that should carry over to the comics. Now, the adventures don't need to be exactly the same. The characters do not need to be drawn exactly like the actors or actresses, but I do think that people should, if they are interested in those, if they are interested in the films or the shows, they should be able to find something in the comics that they like that makes them feel somewhat familiar. And that is how, now everybody's not going to turn to the comics for that, but some people will want to, and you should have something ready for them to dive into. So even though the Hawkgirl may not be the same Hawkgirl, I do think that, like, it might not be Kendra, it might be Shire in the comics he's with. Having Jon Stewart with a Hawkgirl is important, especially when, that's also featured in a popular cartoon show, like Justice League. So, I do think that, in the end, I think there are going to be some people who are not happy with this. I actually do believe that. I think, like, Hal Jordan fans aren't likely to like what's on the horizon, and I don't think Hawkman fans will either. But, I understand that. I've been there before. Like, during all that 2000 stuff, I didn't like what DC was doing either, and it lasted quite a while. That said, I do think they're on the right track, with what they're doing. And I do look forward to seeing where they go with all of this. So I'll keep my eye, on what's going on. And keep an eye out for, any news with these characters. This is an interesting development. It does look like we're going to get both of them together in the same film. So we're no doubt going to have a Jon Stewart and Hawkgirl meet in this 2027 film, which is not far from now. So we'll keep an eye out on, any developments with that. Be sure to let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Check out my own comic, Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian, in the link in the description. If you're a Hawkgirl and Green Lantern fan, there's a really good chance you'll find something in Zatswan that you really enjoy. All right, I'll talk to all of you again very soon. Take care.